I wouldn't worry about not knowing what a Grawlix is. I doubt many people will, but in 10 minutes you'll be expert Grawlix spotters. When I was 14, my family moved south, renting a furnished house for a few months whilst work was finished on our own home. I've always been drawn like a beehive to other people's bookcases. So it was that within an hour of moving in, I'd found this book and hidden it under my mattress. Because my parents had found it, they would have disapproved of the sex and in particular of the language. The book contained 30 instances of the word fuck, and that is a Grawlix. It's a string of typographical symbols that denotes a naughty word. The word fuck is, or the F word for those of sensitive disposition, is so common nowadays that it's hard to credit the outrage that it once caused. From playground to boardroom, you hear it everywhere. We no longer worry about it. It's taken for granted. So it's interesting to follow it in its cultural context. It gives us an idea of the way that cultural norms change over time and are challenged. We first find fuck printed in the 16th century. It was obviously a word that was known before, but this is the first time it appears in print. John Florian writing a dictionary, translating from the Italian word fotre. But after that, it disappears until the 20th century. No sight of it, and at the beginning of the 20th century, it starts to tentatively appear. For instance, D.H. Lawrence, in Sons and Lovers, he hints at it. "You shouldn't funk your own deeds," remonstrated the man. Then Dawes made a remark which caused Paul to throw half a glass of beer over him. Most readers would recognise that Dawes' remark is clearly some kind of pun on the word funk, but it would have been impossible to be any more explicit than that without falling foul of the obscenity laws. Norman Mailer found another way round it. He substituted fug, F-U-G. It's said, I really like this story, so I hope it's true, that when he was introduced to Tallulah Bankhead, the actress, she said, "Oh, so you're the young man who can't spell fuck." Well, D.H. Lawrence could spell it, and he did, in Lady Chatterley's Lover in 1928, which contains a lot of fucking, both the activity and the word itself. Anyone who hasn't read the book, it concerns Constance Chatterley, who has an affair with Mellors, the gamekeeper on her husband's estate. It was controversial for a number of reasons, for instance, adultery across class boundaries, but primarily for the explicit sex and the four-letter words. Lawrence knew that there was no way that he would be able to have it published in England, so it was published privately in Italy and distributed to private subscribers. So if the book's unpublishable, how was it there on this bookcase when I was 14 years old? Well, we need to have a look at its publishing history. It came out in Italy, first edition, 1,000 copies, £2 each. That was an extraordinary amount in those days. My mother's first pay was 10 shillings a week, and she'd only just been born at this time. It's a lot of money. Came out another edition in Paris the following year, but it's not until 1934 that it was available in England. By then Lawrence was dead, And this was an expurgated, authorised version. In other words, one with all the naughty bits taken out. So, not until after the Second World War did an American copy come out. And that caused a big fuss. There was quite a furore, complaints, until the judge, Frederick van Pelt Byron, ruled that the book had artistic merit because it was written with a power and a tenderness that was compelling. And his decision was upheld. Times were changing. Sorry, I need more water. My heart's getting I'm sorry, I'm still suffering from election trauma. So times are changing, and in Britain too, Roy Jenkins brought in a private member's bill to challenge the Obscene Publications Act. The Act had been made in 1857 and badly needed modernising. So from now on, it was actually possible to mount a defence for a publication. Extraordinary as it might seem, it hadn't been possible to defend a publication before. So in the light of that, Penguin brought out 7 of Lawrence's works, amongst which was Lady Chatterley. They were taking a big risk here, because unlike in America, this was a criminal prosecution. So there was a possible prison sentence. That was if they were found guilty, the sentence was a prison sentence. It was tried at the Old Bailey, and as you see from the cues, it caused quite a stir. One of the main concerns of the public prosecutor was that this book was a threat to social order. Unlike the edition at £2, Penguin published paperbacks. It was available for 3 and 6pence, 17.5p in money nowadays. That made it available for women and working class people. Absolutely shocking. When profanity was still limited to professional men, it was less of an issue. Men like, for instance, the judge. Sir Lawrence Byrne, born in Ireland in the 1890s. He's coming to the end of his profession at this time, end of his career. He'd be dead within 5 years. And Mervyn Griffiths-Jones, Eton educated, Coldstream Guards, had a reputation as a conservative reactionary. Penguin had 35 witnesses from distinguished authors, academics, psychologists, all sorts of people, including Raymond Williams, Richard Toggart, Rebecca West, E.M. Foster. But in fact, few of these people were actually required because Griffith-Jones made such a brilliant job himself of antagonising the jury. Many of you will have heard sound bites of his speech, but it's worth looking at it in a little bit more context, so I've given you a bit more than just the sound bite. He tells the jury that one of the ways that they can test the book from the most liberal outlook, I like that definition of liberal, is to ask themselves the question, would you approve of your young sons, your daughters, for girls can read too? Who knew? Reading this book, is it a book that you would have lying around the house? Is it a book that you would even wish your wife and your servants to read? Michael Rubinstein, Penguin's lawyer, had been offered, as was customary at the time, an all-male jury. The customary to save the delicate ears of ladies from hearing unpleasant things, he wisely turned that option down, realising that women were likely to feel very patronised by this attitude. And so were the rest of the jury, which included a teacher, a docker, furniture worker, a furniture maker, ordinary people who just found this ludicrous. It took them very little time to come back with a verdict of not guilty. The fact that it's not guilty doesn't mean, of course, that the papers can publish those words. So we get Grawlixes galore. Now Penguin could release all the books that are there in their warehouse, and they went well. Foyles, which was the biggest bookshop in those pre-Amazon days, took delivery of 300 books the next week, and they sold out within 15 minutes. There were queues outside all the bookshops. Within 2 years, they had sold over 2 million copies. Thanks to the wonderful marketing campaign of the public prosecutor, it became a massive seller. I just wish somebody would try and prosecute my publisher. The ironic thing is that, against what the public prosecutor had hoped about protecting people, the scandal had made it more visible and brought the book within the view of people who would never otherwise have heard of it, would never think of reading a book by Lawrence. It becomes, in the tabloid papers, it becomes serialised and everybody has access to it. Nice little coda to this story is that last year Sotheby's put this on sale. It reached 500,000, considerably more than 3 and 6. This is the judge's copy, with the notes that his wife wrote for him, because he didn't read books. His wife wrote these notes, things like page 23, vulgar. Page 37, lovemaking. She doesn't write the actual words in the book. The other thing that Lady Dorothy did that I think is rather cute is she made a nice little bag so that he wouldn't be embarrassed by being seen in public with the book. And that bag really sums it up, because although the jury had returned an innocent verdict, so the word is now technically legal, it's safely hidden away in books. So generally people aren't going to come across these nasty words, because nobody would surely say fuck in the public domain, would they? Fast forward 5 years, BBC 3, not a channel, TV programme, it superseded, that was the week that was, late night discussion programme. Saturday, November the 13th, the discussion was on censorship. Sir Lord Chamberlain had just banned Edward Bond's play, Saved. In those days, you had to have your plays checked by the Lord Chamberlain before they could be put on. It had been banned, and they were discussing it in the studio. One of the guests, Kenneth Tynan, outspoken theatre critic, who said, "I doubt if there are any rational people to whom the word fuck would be particularly diabolical, revolting, or totally forbidden." Remember, in those days, TV was transmitted live, so there's no possibility of editing this out. But everybody carried on as normal, no fuss. The next day, there was a huge fuss. A load of MPs signed a motion of censure. The bishops weighed into the argument. Everybody made a big fuss about it. But so it's gone on step by step. The Oz trial, the Sex Pistols, little by little, those barriers have been pushed back against a prudish and repressed society. Nowadays, they don't even bother to bleep out fuck. You can wear it. You can drink your coffee out of it. You can dry your dishes with it. You can even put it on your birthday cake as a candle. We've become remarkably tolerant of this word. And one example of that is this man. Remember Andrew Mitchell, Government Chief Whip? In 2002, he's coming out of Downing Street with his bike and makes a big fuss with the police because he wants them to open up the vehicle gates. You see it better on the police CCTV footage. It seems perfectly reasonable that one would expect Mitchell to go through the pedestrian gate pushing his bike, but with an overinflated idea of his self-importance, he shouted at the police on duty, "Best you learn your fucking place. You don't run the fucking government, you're just fucking plebs." Not surprisingly, the police put in a complaint. Mitchell foolishly denied it, and then even more foolishly decided to sue for libel. But happily, the judge disagreed, and he was satisfied, at least on the balance of probability, that Mitchell did speak the words attributed to him, or close enough to amount to the same thing. The politically toxic word, plebs. So, no problem with the fucking. So in the space of 50 years, we've moved from this word causing total outrage to being so commonplace that it doesn't even merit mention. It was really no longer important. We find it on reputable magazines, on books. Not only Heston, who arguably has something to actually communicate, but it's used as an eye-catching gimmick to sell any number of books. Even colouring books. If you want an alternative to those socks for Christmas. And the final irony, what I find extraordinary, is this. This is a journal. Think about that. It's blank. There are no words inside this book. The words are on the cover. So we've got a complete reversal from a plain cover. The words have come outside. So, taboo. Is fuck taboo or not taboo? That's my question. Taboo words carry a tremendous power. They also perform a useful social function. Moralists and speech zealots may get hot under the collar about fuck, but quite seriously, it's no longer offensive. Some may find it vulgar and coarse, but that's no reason to disallow it. Overuse has eroded the power of fuck. It's rendered it trite and banal, so that we no longer care. To paraphrase Kenneth Tynan, nobody is any longer revolted by the word, and frankly, we don't give a fuck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rory. So, does anybody have any questions for Rory and the story of I'm looking around? Anybody got any questions? Anybody want to know anything about digging into the word? Yes, David.
Do you think the word cunt still has has power and potency.
Thank you, David.